It is another week of men liking stuff, and this men liking stuff, as I teased in the last men liking stuff, we're talking about the Primarch pairing of Angron and Sanguinius, and we have Matthew and Jan Helge here with us to talk about liking stuff. Now, I joke that the way to get women into Warhammer 40K is to show them a picture of Sanguinius, and it has worked multiple times. He is one of the two angels of these pairings. He's known as, I'm going to make a mistake right off the top, the Great Angel? Yes. And then Angron is the Red Angel. So, Matthew, we're going to start with you because you got Sanguinius behind you.
Yes.
What is it about Sanguinius as a character or this pairing that made you want to come on and talk about why you like this particular Primarch head to head?
So Sanguinius is, well, he's the savior of the Imperium in a lot of senses.
Hmm.
He's sort of held up as the great angel. He's vital to many aspects of the canon of the lore, and he's a very interesting character. He's a tragic character in a lot of senses. The way he's cursed with the foresight of his own death, very much in the same way as Conrad Kurz is, although lesser extent.
We talked about
Um,
that on the last episode a lot, how that
yeah,
affected him. Yeah. Yeah.
but he's there's also the underlying rage that comes out at different times for Sanguinius as well. But he overcomes a lot of that in his sort of path in where he lives as a mutant and exists on Bar Secundus. So it's yeah, there's lots of multi-layered aspects to Sanguinius that I like as a character.
Yeah. And I think that the juxtaposition between the two of them and how they sort of, you know, Sanguinius was the savior of the Empire, as you said, in a lot of ways. Angron couldn't even save himself in a lot of ways. Jan Helge, what appeals to you about Angron as a character and then this pairing as well?
Well, when it comes to Angron, it's more of the tragedy of his entire personality. In my opinion, he's one of the worst treated Primarchs for different reasons, but he's um there's a YouTuber called Arbiter who does a lot of good really good Warhammer stuff, and he actually he did a video on whether or not the Emperor was a bad dad, and the only one he sort of could concede was a bad dad moment was the treatment of Angron. Now I'm also on the sort of the treatment of Conrad Curse was also kind of shitty, but when it comes to Angron, it's the fact that a lot of the pre-Butcher's Nails moments were showed a very much a almost like a Sanguinius type character, and then he gets the Butcher's Nails installed, and then he completely changes. Uh, that is that is kind of like that drastic personality change is sort of it shows the horrific nature of the Warhammer universe, but it also shows the horrific nature of Nuceria, which is the planet that Angron landed on, and the fact that he doesn't want to use violence unless it's an absolute out for him. Uh, I mean, the his first interaction with the world is killing off a troop of Eldars sent to kill him because
Hmm.
they know their Farseer has foreseen what he is going to become. And that's another tragedy, because if they hadn't interacted with him, perhaps the capture of him and the eventual enslavement of him and the butcher's nails
Hmm.
wouldn't have happened. And then there's also the fact that Nuceria is in the area of Ultramar,
Hmm.
and that sort of puts another layer on it, because Nuceria was close to where Gilliman stopped expanding before the Emperor found him. So it's one of those situations. There's a lot of what ifs with Angron. And then there's just this tragedy of this person who wanted so much to be free, but just remains a slave for eternity to his anger, the Emperor's biggest mistake, and the cruelty of Nuceria. So
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons why I adore Angron.
Yeah, and I mean all the Primarchs' names are very much on the nose, but these two, I mean that there's this sort of compare and contrast about their lack of choices that define them. I mean, the butcher's nails are an obvious thing. The fact that he was a slave, and Sanguinius is very sanguine about knowing how he's going to die. He uses it to his advantage in very tactical ways sometimes, like we're going to fight, not today. But that compare and contrast is what I find interesting. There's a big difference between them too. And Matthew, I know you have comments on this. The fact that Angron doesn't choose to join the Emperor.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah,
I mean, to be fair with Angron, I mean, not getting into too much in Angron's backstory, but you do have the Night of the Wolf where he's sanctioned by
yeah.
Leaving Russ, and then that doesn't go well, and so he gets handed off to Horus, who had already fallen to chaos, and that was terrible. But Angron didn't exactly need a particular push into chaos. I mean, he's of all the Primarchs, when Angron falls to chaos, oh, that's not exactly
Yeah.
the biggest surprise.
Oh, I mean,
Um,
when he's discovered, he doesn't choose it. They're in this big battle, and he just beam me up, Emperor.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, in Ysera he chooses to stay with his gladiator men and die with them instead of join the Emperor, and he was like, yeah, no, you can, but no,
mhm. And
but also for
he never quite gets over being ripped away from his people that way.
no, but with Sanguinius as well. Obviously, Sanguinius never falls to chaos. He is no one ever thinks that he would ever fall to chaos except for Horus, who Sanguinius is closest to. They were seen as the closest of the Primarchs prior to the heresy. Um, and uh, Horus is actually one of the things he's concerned about Sanguinius falling to uh, chaos and actually insists in oh God, what's the planet name? Can't remember. Sitcom? No, not sitcoms. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
The
it's a Nephilim. It's the Nephilim War, or the
no, it's
Nephilim.
right. It's right at the start. Erebus has an ambush set for the Blood Angels. Or
Yeah,
is
it's
that?
when they're going after the Nephilim, but it turns out to be demons. I
Yeah,
can't
that's the one.
remember the name of the planet either. That's
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Either way, we but the plan isn't to necessarily kill Sanguinius, and Horus insists that Sanguinius is killed during the thing, and well, I mean Erebus's plans go awry generally, and because he's a dick. But it's yeah, but one of the reasons that um one of the demons speaks to Horus about is, oh, you really want. Horus says it's because Sanguinius will never turn, but one of the demons said, no, is it real? It's really because you think if he does turn, that he's the only one that would actually gain more favor with the gods than you. Um, so it's one of those things where, you know, could Sanguinius have been War Master? A lot of the Primarchs thought he should have been War Master instead of Horus, and it's always one of these things. So I mean, that's why I think we get the contrast with Angron, whereas with Sanguinius, everything's kind of under the surface, and the fact that there's a potential there. Was a potential there. Um, with Sanguinius, it's one of the things that they do see when, again, prior to being discovered and everything, when he's on uh, Ball Secundus, he lands on a planet of mutants, whereas mutation is very rampant, and you can debate and argue about whether or not he was designed as a mutant or if he
Hmm.
became mutated from landing on that planet. I mean, and there's not an answer as far as I'm aware, and it can be argued either way. But regardless, so he's somewhere where he's accepted despite his mutations. Um, but he still ends up showing. I mean, what they call him? I think the Black Angel they end up calling him when he ends up slaughtering some of the other mutant tribes that are doing various unpleasant things, and leading his what are they called, the Pure or something like that, to conquer the whole of Bal Secundus. And so it's always been there, but because he's in this sort of environment where he's able to find his better angels for lack of a
Hmm.
better, and he's very extremely protective of people. And one of the reasons he goes with the Emperor uh, is because one of the things he emphasizes him is, oh, well, because you want to protect the rest of humanity the way you protected your people here on Bal Secundus. And it's you see the same thing in Angron, um, where obviously he's immediately thrown into a ziggurat in a pit that fills with acid and has to fight his way to the top, and is effectively forced to knock everyone else off in it, and then cries for reportedly the last time.
Hmm.
I'm because of the people he's been forced to kill, and then he's forced over and over again in the pits, and eventually refuses to. So it's you see, it's the same kind of nature where he's wanting to put same kind of protective nature, which you can see a benefit of being engineered into them in the darkness, but because of I mean, the different situations they both ended up landing in, Sanguinius being protected to
Hmm.
a sense, as much as you can protect a Primarch. Um, Whereas Angron is effectively just used and thrown into slave pits to fight
Yeah.
as a gladiator. Yeah, and then obviously you have the butcher's nails um, incident, which never went wrong, obviously. It's
Archaeotech
uh,
always found
So
yeah,
blame.
you never
for
goes wrong.
people that may just be looking at this, because people watch YouTube videos without knowing the source material to inform their opinions, what is are the butcher's nails?
Oh, the butcher's nails is a type of archaeotech that is implanted in the skull, and there's this network of of wires and electrodes sort of spreading throughout the brain. And one of the things that is reported in some of the Horus Heresy books, especially the ones regarding Argon, that came out wrong, Angron, um, is that the Emperor tried to remove them, but they were so well drilled into uh, Angron's skull
It
and his
remapped his brain. Yeah.
remapped his
Yeah.
brain. So all he could really feel was anger, and it's one of it basically works on the level that it drives the wearer into a unbelievably angry state of mind, and sort of, so it's very fitting. The name again, it's it's very fitting.
Very on the nose.
Yeah, too on the nose sometimes. It's like Ferrus Manus, the Iron Hands chief has iron hands, which is sort of fun, but it is it is one of those really disturbing types of tech that not even the Emperor truly understands, which shows that it is probably either it has some sort of xenotech origin, or it is so deep into the dark age of technology that the Emperor never had anything to do with any type of development. And the weird thing is that it's only Nuceria, as far as I know at least, that uses the butcher snails and installs them into people and the subject. And another thing as well is that the butcher snails were not built to be installed into Primarchs.
Hmm.
So they, instead of just keeping him in a state of anger, they actually are slowly killing him.
Killing his mental stability, yeah.
No, killing him, period.
Oh, really? I thought it was just damaging his capacity to reason. Matthew, which version do you
No,
understand?
it was no, it is they were killing him. It's so
Oh, that just didn't
it,
happen
it,
because Chaos keeps 3D printing him.
no, that's after.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah,
so
Right.
basically, um, the Emperor could have removed the butcher's nails, but doing so would have killed him outright because the butcher's nails had replaced parts of his brain.
Right. Yeah.
After so he got Arkham Land and created the Android to come up to look at him and everything. And said, "Well, can you not remove these?" No, we can't. Well, I can, but his physiology and the nails are completely integrated. Doing so would be just removing half his brain effectively. Um, so they basically the Emperor had a choice in essence, which was remove the nails, kill him instantly, um, leave him with the nails in his head, and he will die slowly over 100 years or so, or however long it takes. Uh, Basically, by the time the heresy has been launched and Angron and Lorgar take their legions back to New Syria, um, Angron's coming to the end, basically.
Okay.
He's almost uncontrollable, and Lorgar is fully aware that the nails are going to kill him soon. And this is why Lorgar, in his imitable way,
infinite wisdom.
yeah, sort of orchestrates events to the point where Angron ends up fighting Gulliman on New Syria. And it's that point where he achieves apotheosis and is ascended to be a demon prince of Khorne. And it's the apotheosis that saves his
That saves
life,
him. Right.
which is something Lorgar understands, and does it. So he arranges things so that happens, and he doesn't die. Um, of course, he's now a demon prince of Khorne, and even though he gets blown apart by artillery and killed multiple times over the next tens of thousands of years, he still keeps coming back because he's a Prince of Khorne, so he can still
Right.
be summoned back into the materium. So, you know, it's um in one sense saved his brother's life, in the other sense damned him to eternity of pain and anger. So, you
Peak
know,
Lorgar. Peak Lorgar choice. Yeah.
pretty much,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's peak Angron in any
True.
case, because he never gets any say
Uh-uh. Yeah.
to any of the choices that are made for him. He doesn't choose to kill his own mentor in
Oh,
the gladiator pits on New Syria. He doesn't get to choose to die with his comrades on New Syria. He doesn't get to choose the fact that he becomes a demon prince. So he is basically a slave for his entire existence in the Warhammer universe, and he's never going to be free of that. It's another layer on of the tragedy that is Angron.
Yeah, he doesn't have the cope that Conrad Curse has. Conrad Curse developed this entire complicated philosophy about fear as the only true motivator and what I do is necessary and all that stuff. Angron just stays in a state of perpetual, this is bullshit. I mean, I'm making it really reductive, but it makes him it makes him a more likable character, even though, I mean, all the Primarchs get the shit end of the stick in some ways. Every single one of them is sort of like, well, that sucks, but it's
Yeah,
extra. I mean, Angron is always top two, of which Primarch got the absolute rawest deal. Matthew, you look
I
like
mean,
you were gonna say something, yeah.
well, I think it's what Kurz is the most unreliable narrator of all time.
yep.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
his
No, the most unreliable narrator is Alfarius Omegon.
oh yeah,
Right.
true.
Because you never know which one of the two are talking. But yeah, I'd
No,
say Conrad Curse is also
he's
Yeah.
up there, yeah.
He's
unreliable.
philosophically very consistent except for his starting assumptions, like so many people out there.
Well, yeah, and again, it's a reason of his upbringing as well, because it's
Or lack thereof,
uh,
yeah.
well, yeah, but with Angron is almost the polar opposite of Kurz
Yeah.
in the fact that Angron is well, he's just pure emotion, pure rage. Um, it's you know, I mean, in a sense, I mean that's part of it, from my opinion anyway. It's kind of the way you get the tragedy of Angron, kind of made completely evident in the fact that he's beset with this pain and anger and rage that he can never move past. So he can't move past it because of the butcher's nails.
Right.
Um, but and which again is as Jan Helge said, it's a choice that gets taken away from him by the
Yeah.
implantation of
Yeah.
the devices in a very 40K way. Whereas uh, Sanguinius is the same, has not the same issues, but some of the similar issues
Yeah.
in the fact that he's beset by visions of his own death for well, for a huge portion of the heresy anyway. But he foresees the coming of the Emperor, same as Conrad Kurz, who's the only one of two Primarchs to see that. He is the
There's three Primarchs who foresees the coming of
okay, yeah,
the
Hmm.
Emperor. You also have Lorgar.
true, yeah, sorry. Uh, then you have you know, talks to him, he kind of see, so he has that. He also has the issues of being an outsider because of his mutation.
Yeah.
He, he has this constant conflict within him about being human, being Primarch, what's the difference, and being, having this very visual, well, I mean, can you call massive angel wings a deformity? I don't know, but it's, yeah,
Trying to get in very narrow doorways.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's an issue for all
To do the
Primarchs,
Mick
really,
Jagger
but.
thing.
he's he's that pretty mutant thing, like the difference between heroes and villains is how good looking they are thing. He's still a mutant. There's still an inherent distrust of that.
Considering the Primarchs are said to range somewhere between 12 and 14 feet tall,
Yeah.
narrow doorways are a bit of an issue for all of them, I think, regardless. But
Narrow by Primarch standards. Yeah, they sort of just
yeah,
smash their way through all of
it's
them. But I
yeah,
mean, it is a mutation. And like we said, we don't know whether he was a Lady Gaga song or whether they were put in afterwards. Or both. I mean, there's some theories that they're part warp energy, aren't they?
Well, yeah,
yeah.
uh there's a short story with my favorite Primarch, Corvus Corax, that mentions how he has become what they've always been. That's what he tells Lorgar. And he has basically become this sort of massive shadow raven in the warp, um, hunting the traitor Primarchs. And but yeah, it's the thing also that people sometimes forget about Sanguinius is he's not just a mutant. His legion also has one of the most dangerous
Yeah.
G laws of all of the legions that we know of, because the Red Thirst could strike at any time, and sort of that could cost the that could cost the entirety of an imperial army if it hits several of the Blood Angels at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
You see, sorry,
and,
yeah, I was
and
gonna say you see this as well with it's something you just made me think, Ian, of how you, you see the difference between the legions between Angron and Sanguinius, because obviously when Sanguinius is discovered, he's not given to his legion straight away. He
Yeah.
spends time with Lunar Wolves and Horus, and then he's taken to them. And but prior to finding Sanguinius, the Blood Angels are they're nobody wants to have anything to do with them. They're seen as just degenerates. They're cannibals. They routinely eat the dead of their enemies and comrades alike.
Well,
Uh,
that's not unheard of from other Primarchs either, for different reasons.
well, no, all the Space Marines
No,
have the
so
Omniphagia,
Space Marines, yeah.
which
Yeah.
allows them to absorb the knowledge of
Right.
what they eat. Um, but the Blood Angels were just prior to Sanguinius, were just doing it randomly. They were seen as defective. They were seen as no, it's like nobody would say, "All right, these guys are wrong," because the Emperor made them right, and he's one of his leaders, so you can't say
Right.
anything. But
Right.
like, it
Right.
was it was an unspoken truth. Everyone's like, "No, these guys are fucked up. There's
Yeah.
something going wrong here. I wouldn't want to be in a sort and associated with them."
Yeah, because
And but
that's before the Night Lords completely went to shit.
well, the Night Lords have always been the Night Lords, but
But they
yeah,
got way worse when they started recruiting from
they,
Nostromus.
yeah, they
Yeah.
were hiding it at that point, you know. But
Yeah.
but like I mean the Bloodlords, what am I talking about? The Blood
Blood
Angels
Angels. Yeah.
were
that is
very much
actually a really cool homemade name for homemade chapter, the
The
Bloodlords.
it would be,
Bloodlords.
yeah. It
Yeah.
would be, yeah. But no, they were um they were seen as just almost like monsters.
Yeah.
They were just thrown into the most brutal compliance wars, absolute rampaging, brutes, effectively. Whereas the Warhounds were, I mean, there's no such thing as a cuddly space marine, really,
Well,
but they were a
they were
functioning legion.
Right.
yeah they were kept back very often and let loose at like they were the Shakespearean line
Yeah,
that
I mean,
the emperor would let loose his loyal
Yeah.
warhounds whenever he felt like, okay, now I need
yeah,
them. But and the funny thing as well is that the Blood Angels before Sanguinius was found was known as the Raveners,
yeah.
which is, you know,
Yeah, the
That's what
biblical
they were,
name
right?
changes, the biblical style name changes that they do for things in Warhammer, those tend to be significant.
Yeah, but then you
yeah.
see the introduction of the Primarchs, and the first thing Sanguinius does with the Blood Angels is he learns all their names and makes a pledge to them instead of making them make a pledge to him, and raises them up and forms them into one of the most beloved legions.
He kneels to
Angron gets, yeah, he
he
kneels to them,
kneels, he kneels to them.
and Angron, on the other hand, gets introduced to the Warhounds, and then things go badly. on.
He kills all the officers apart
And
from
Yeah,
Karn.
yeah, pretty
there's
much.
a weird but almost kind of sweet dynamic there with
Yeah.
Angron and his legion. Though they're he's like this guy who's losing his mind that wanders off, and they go out and find him and they bring him back. And I always find myself in those moments going, "Oh, he's scared." No, he can't feel scared, but there's got to be some angry approximation of scared or something going
Well,
on there. This is a
one
complexity
of
of the character.
The,
one of the
the
things about that was, sorry,
Mhm.
one of the things
No,
about
go
that was
ahead.
after he left his legion, he disappeared for years,
Yeah,
and Khan eventually tracks him down. And when Khan tracks him down, one of the things he says to him is not, I was just looking for an enemy who could put me out of my misery. So that's all he was doing. He didn't just wander off. He went out to find somebody who was good enough to be able to kill him and couldn't
it
do it.
it felt very much like those moments where the Hulk in Marvel Comics goes off to some Brazilian rainforest or another planet where he can only hurt people who are going to hurt him back. That's what they feel like to me.
well, yeah, and
I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
no,
I mean, there
that.
is a lot of the Incredible Hulk in Angron, both in design and in sort of the fact that that's all he can feel.
well, it's the perpetual Hulk.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's not someone who turns as he becomes angry. He's just
Yeah.
whenever. I mean, there's a couple of stories that include Karn, Karn the Betrayer, um, and he sort of describes the butcher's nails as being without them is almost like being dulled.
Yeah.
So being without the signal. There's the latest book from the Scouring, the first book of the Scouring, um, mentions how Karn is almost destroyed, and he almost loses connections with his butcher's nails, and the dullness that he feels at that point is he he just can't really explain it. But
Well, because they affect his serotonin secretion, don't they? I mean, that's how they're supposed to work in humans. Like that's a feature. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But it's also the other thing about the butcher's nails and the introductions of the butcher's nails is that the Legion chooses to do it.
yeah.
the The majority of the Legion, apart from the Psychers and the few loyalists that are left,
Well, the
Mhm.
choose.
Psychers tried. It just really didn't go
Yeah,
well.
yeah, it went really horrible. It went really fucking bad. It
When a
went,
psyker
oh,
makes a
Warhammer.
bad decision, it's a
Yeah,
very bad decision. Yeah.
yeah. But it's interesting how they choose to do it to become closer to their gene father, Angron.
Hmm. Yeah.
And uh, but it doesn't really work either, because Angron didn't choose
Yeah.
it. So Angron has a connection to the butcher snails that no one ever can feel unless they're forced to take it upon themselves. So it's almost like he starts to hate his sons more once they adopt the butcher's nails, because they choose
Yeah.
to take it upon themselves. So it is one of those. It's just a tragic Legion from top to
Yeah.
bottom. That
Well,
entire the world leaders, they
I
are.
yeah, I was being particularly shitty surrounding the release of that Wuthering Heights remake. And I explained it to somebody who knows Warhammer as Wuthering Heights is just basically a flawed romance between Angron and Sanguinius because he does have that Heathcliff quality to him, Angron. Whereas I think a lot of people miss in Sanguinius that he's not Vulcan, right? He's not kind of a teddy bear-ish, really feelsy. It's all very thoughtful. It's like thoughts first to give him that sanguine nature. The rage that, you pointed out, Matthew, is always there. Is this almost like Primarch factory default setting that every single one of them either figures out a way to harness, not control because you can't, or you become Angron or some of the others. But what do you think about, because obviously, Sanguinius's lasting legacy to the Blood Angels is the Red Thirst and the Black Rage, and that can be a
Yeah.
metaphor for so many things. But while he was alive, how do you see that very clearly cognitive work he's done on that part of himself?
So, I mean, it's two separate things, really. So you have the Red Thirst, which is just, I mean, this is the goes to the cannibalism, the blood drinking,
Yeah,
um, the constant issues that the Blood Angels have. That's genetic flaw, very obviously catastrophically serious one that's within uh, the Blood Angels. And yeah, a lot of things are rushed in the attempt to get the Great Crusade underway as soon as possible.
right.
Um, and so this is one of the things that more Sanguinius helps the Blood Angels to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, in a sense, so the Blood Angels, uh, Legion ship, I can't remember what it's called now. Doesn't matter. But it was actually said to be filled with works of art and uh, paintings and sonnets and all this sort of stuff that the Blood Angels made themselves, but they never show it to anybody. He taught them to find a better side of themselves, a better nature, and to embrace it. Obviously, they still did their duty. There was still ways to sort it out. He even permitted them to continue their rituals of cannibalism, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, for a while, there's actually a point in the book Betrayer where the and I think it's Radadon. I can't remember. It's one of his uh, Marines, and he fights in the pits in the gladiator games that the World Eaters hold.
Hmm.
He fights alongside Khan. He's like Khan's friend. Um,
Oh, it's the
yeah.
Flesh
Oh,
Terror.
yeah.
Yes, the Flesh Terror. He becomes the chapter master of the Flesh Terrors. I'm still blanking on the name. Either way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
I
amazing
just
how
know him
it's
as the Flesh
there.
Terror.
The
yeah,
names
yeah,
are there in your head until you try to pull them out. And then it's
yeah.
Yeah.
like they just, yeah.
So he's uh Sanguinius and Angron come and watch them fight in the gladiatorial pits, and then and the flesh terror actually ends up eating part of one of his enemies at this point, and Sanguinius then chastises him for it, and it's not as it's not the way Angron would chastise one of his Marines, obviously,
Hmm.
um, but it is
No,
very much
if he chastises a Marine,
they're
there's
generally
not
just
much.
dead.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
a
yeah,
grease
there's not
stain.
much
Yeah.
left of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very much we talked about this. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed sort of
Yeah, yeah.
energy.
Yeah. It's
Uh
closing
sort
again.
of thing.
Yeah.
Um which is and again it's you can see how it just demonstrates how that kind of thing is more effective. In the sense of he controls it. And it's kind of the duality between Angron and Sanguinius, whereas I mean you can see like it's almost like the better and worse angel, right?
Yeah.
Not as in quality, but as in uh Sanguinius I mean they both have the same flaw in the anger and rage and negative side. Sanguinius turns to his better angels. Angron is, I mean, because of the nature of the character, he doesn't have a choice, but he's forced into the negative aspects. In so it's something that mirrors itself throughout the legions as well.
There's
Amit.
there's
Amit.
Yes.
yeah.
I remember the name Amit. That's the one that I can link
Yeah. I
to
mean,
him.
they pull from a lot of history in Warhammer 40K. And the fact that, that slave mentality that Angron so embodies, it's really very tragic, and it does sort of speak a truth about kind of the nature of the Primarchs in a lot of ways. He's the far end of the spectrum of what they all have to grapple with is they were created for a specific purpose. They're as much a tool, they're as much a living weapon as anything else, even though the Emperor refers to them as his sons. I've always,
Well, that's a gradual
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Because Malkador, the Sigilite, comments on
hmm
that that he finds it strange, and also a couple of the custodians also do the same. Valdor especially notes how strange it is how the Emperor has started to referring to his Primarchs as his sons, which
yeah.
is
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a thing with the Emperor of Mankind. He's very clear, I'm just a man. And he does
yeah.
make mistakes, and part of the reason it makes him such an interesting character is that it's very opaque. We're never given very much of kind of his internal world, and we're left to question some of his very big decisions, including forming these bonds. I don't even know if he knew what the end game was with the Primarchs. I don't think he
He probably
intended to just kind of drop them cold, but that's, you know.
Well, there's again, Malkador the Sigilite,
hmm
when he's comforting uh, one of his closest aides who's about to die in a short story,
hmm
he's mentioning how they, and this is early in the heresy. Horus has just declared war against the Emperor, and Malkador sort of intimates that they always planned for this. Not that they necessarily planned for the heresy in itself, but that the that
It's
one of the
that
ways.
the
Sorry.
new the new conflict was inevitable is what he
Yeah.
gets at. It's like
Right.
the you knew the Primarchs were always going to, and that's the first Lord of the Imperium. When that
Yeah.
comes along,
First
that's
Lord. Thank you.
hmm
yeah. It's a really good one, but is there's it also comes out in the Siege of Terror novels as well.
Yeah.
Um, the Emperor always knew that all his sons would die eventually. But he created them because as effectively proxies for himself.
Right.
So they all manifested certain aspects of the Emperor. Um, so I think, and so they're there because, and it's all this for, and going into the Emperor's motivations is just the definition of a circular argument that you end up in. But from my reading of everything, the Emperor's big battle is with chaos. It's why a lot of his decisions seem haphazard
Yeah.
because he's constantly remaking the plan. He can't, despite the fact that he's tens of thousands of years old and the most powerful being in the galaxy, he never sort of plans out massively in advance. It's always, okay, we're doing this, now we're doing this, now we're doing this. And it's, okay, this has changed. Okay, so we change the plan. And we change the plan. And it's
Yeah.
constantly adapting
Yeah.
because he has to he's counteracting a mirror, in effect, in the warp and in the chaos that is always going to be there. So it's kind of like why did I obviously Angron is, I mean, he has a certain set of skills, but he's, the we can say when he finds Angron, there's certain issues of, well, maybe he would have been better off just removing the nails,
Yeah.
sort of thing. Um, but he doesn't, and he goes, okay, well, no, yes, you're a homicidal maniac, and very uncontrollable and very reckless and extremely dangerous, but you're still getting a legion of the most powerful warriors ever created, and you're still going off into the galaxy to bring
Because
human.
I don't have time for this shit right
It
now.
Yeah,
it
This
so
type of thing.
many so many of the Emperor's decisions seem vaguely desperate to me, you know? That's one of
Well,
them.
it is he is people always need to remember he's on a timetable.
yeah,
He's on
Yeah.
the thing is that in Master of Mankind, which is one of my favorite Horus Heresy books, he describes to Ra, his one of his custodies, how he how his premonitions work, that he can see the top of a cliff, but he doesn't know how to really get there. So you can't see every handhold, every loose rock,
Right.
every and the same thing. He also later tries to explain it by looking at a vast ocean and then seeing the shoreline far away. He doesn't know what's hiding in the water underneath, but he knows where he needs to go. So yeah, he has a goal in mind, but he constantly has to change his plans because reefs appear
Right.
in a stormy ocean. Sharks start circling a tiny raft. So it is really it is really interesting, and it's also very interesting that he going back to Sanguinius, he made his most pop. He's claiming that he's not a god while appearing in a huge golden armor, and one of his main primarchs has wings. Yeah, sure,
Doesn't
sure,
another one of
buddy.
them end up having wings too? Fulgrim does, doesn't he?
Yeah,
no, Foden becomes a snake. Well, I
yeah.
suppose
No,
he's a snake with wings.
which is yeah, it was in his
Angron,
armor
Angron,
before that.
Angron
Angron,
has wings as
Angron
well.
gets Angron has wings
Okay.
when he's a demon prince,
There's
but
so much
Corvus
going on
Corax
with the Angron models. Yeah, Corvus Corax does, so
Corvus
that's right.
Corax has the ability to
No, the
fly because
jetpacks.
it's
Yeah.
with jetpacks
Yeah.
and steel wings. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, the Emperor, he does that psychological stuff. It's almost like he's so old and he's been through so much, he's lost bits of himself, and that affects calculations like, knowing Angron's suffering. Just,
I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
it's I don't think it's losing bits of himself.
Hmm.
It's just a complete inability to relate to
Yeah,
normal
maybe he
people
never had
anymore.
it. Yeah, I mean, he grew up, if that's still canon-ish, he grew up pretty rough.
Well, no one really knows everything that's ever been
Yeah,
written
that
about how the Emperor.
story. Yeah.
It's all retellings, and no one actually really knows. All they know is that really, by the time you get to the heresy, he's somewhere between 35,000 years old.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the earliest thing I've heard him describe him is him talking about his earliest memories when he was about 200. It's
Yeah. Yeah,
but
they
you
cleaned
you
up some of those
yeah.
stories.
But you get this, you get the tragedy of the whole thing with how well, he says he's not a god and ends up being worshipped as a god. But it's more a case of, he tries to extinguish religion from humanity
Hmm.
because in effect, it all leads to the warp. Any kind of all this spiritual belief just feeds into the warp, and that's his enemy that he's trying to negate. So, I mean, it's in this short story, The Last Church. You get the uh, he gets told that like people need some sort of something to believe in. And he says, no, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
Logic, science, imperial truth, on you go. And then everyone starts worshipping him.
yeah. But the funny, yeah, and
That was a
it's a
blind
good,
spot.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good analogy for the cult of personality that you get in religious free societies. But the funny thing is that he didn't deny the people of Baal Secundus and Baal to keep their religion worshiping the great angel.
Oh, and
Mhm.
I mean, he's always been. I mean,
Oh,
the
he's a
emperor's always
pragmatist, so
been.
if it works, they let him
He's
do
been
it. Yeah.
flexible. So
Yeah.
you still obviously when he went to Mars, the Mechanicum were useful and had a
Right.
lot of things that he needed. So yeah, Omnissiah, yeah,
Omnissiah.
fine. Just
Yeah.
believe what you
Yeah.
want. Oh, you think I'm the Omnissiah? Yeah, okay, whatever. Just let's
Well, he did
give us a ships.
he did a bit of a Bene Gesserit
Yeah.
in that case
Yeah.
because he kind of he dumped the dragon into the labyrinth beneath Mars and sort of it kind of kick-started the Mechanicum in that way because they eventually sort of there is one part of the Mechanicum or the Mechanicus, depends on which side you're talking about, um, that believes that um, the great machine god is beneath the surface of Mars, which means that they believe that the dragon is the machine god, which is interesting because then they're worshiping a Catan shard, which
Whoops.
unravels the entire
Right.
pie.
Yeah. Whoops.
So,
Yeah, and
so
that's what's interesting about Warhammer 40K, right? Because it's pulled from so many, we're talking about the similarities last men liking stuff about Vulcan pulling from that god of fire, but also Thor with him being the people's protector and there's a lot of uh you know
and he dresses in green,
he does.
by
He
the way.
does dress in green. But there's like Judaic stuff. There's definitely a lot of Greek. They're pulling from so many things. You can pour over this stuff like a Talmudic scholar looking for clues regarding a whole bunch of things and never really know. Now,
Well, that's kind of the point
yeah,
because Warhammer first and foremost is a game system,
yeah,
and in that game system, you need to have a certain amount of freedom to be able to create your own legion, your own chapter. So, uh, one of the theories behind I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I love bringing up the Lost Primarchs. So,
I do too. Okay.
one of the theories behind the Lost Primarchs is that uh, the team at GW meant them to be like a stand-in for all the chapters that sort of isn't mentioned that you can create as you feel like, uh, and play as though they are,
The Lost Primarch.
well, members of the lost, um, of the
Lost,
lost Primarchs, yeah,
yeah.
successor chapters to the
Yeah.
Lost Legions, or successor chapters to
No,
hybrid legions.
now with the horse heresy technically being over, we talked about this with the last two guys too. Actually, let's do the Blood Angels curse as well, because this is something that is always now we know that there's bits of Sanguinius still out there, but Matthew, I know we've talked about this, but how do you
Well,
have
some was left on the floor of the vengeful spirit.
yeah, there's a
Quite a
bit
bit.
on Horace's shoe, but how do you have the psychic connection to the last memories of a dead guy. It suggests there's a part of him that's still out there.
Yeah, so and this is very kind of not contentious, but it's very still open in the lore. So it is thought there is still a shadow of Sanguinius within somewhere within the
In a
warp.
warp, yeah.
Um,
But some
Again,
people would say
it's
it's been so pulled apart it's not him anymore, but there's still memories, so there's got to be something there.
so my personal read on it is that it's not Sanguinius. And from my reading of the book, where I
Hmm.
see it is, and again, Games Workshop will be Games Workshop and do what they want. They may, I may turn the computer on tomorrow and there's an announcement that he's back. I don't know. But
That would
from my
sell a
read,
lot of fucking models.
it would, yeah. Which is
They're
kind of
cashing in a large lost Primarch. We're bringing him back. Now there's only
yeah.
one.
But yeah, my read on it is Sanguinius is dead, fully dead, gone completely. The Black Rage, which is kind of the curse comes around. So then you have the Red Thirst and the Black Rage, and the
Hmm.
two they're very closely related and
Yeah,
interchanged a lot, but then not. So the Red Thirst is something that has always affected them, and is always kind of an underlying mutation and gene defect with them.
right.
The Black Rage really took hold and affected them after Sanguinius' death. Obviously, when Horus kills Sanguinius, it's on the Bridge of the Vengeful Spirit. It's in the half in, half out of the warp
Yeah.
as the entirety of Terra is consumed at this point at the peak of the heresy. And it's kind of like I see it as it's like a psychic scar on the gene seed of all Sanguinius' sons. So it's kind of like a psychic scar
Well, it's a
put on
metaphor
the
for
gene seed.
intergenerational trauma. Yeah.
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 And that gets so it gets passed down um through all of the gene seed. So every time that a new uh this is one of the reasons why, again, in my opinion, Belisarius Cawl wasn't able to cure the the either the Black Rage or the Red Thirst.
Hmm.
He was able to again, minimize them and make them maybe less predominant, but they're still a feature of the Blood Angels, even after they've been adapted, because it's just now it's inherent to the gene seed. So the only way to not have a Marine infect or cursed by the Black Rage is to have not have a Blood Angels gene seed, which means you don't
Right.
get any more Blood Angels.
Right.
Um, so I see the way they still get these memories is because those are the memories Sanguinius had at the time of his death, and it's his effectively psychic memory that gets scarred onto the gene seed. So it's not so much as they're connect. I mean, it people can argue, and it could be considered, it could be easily be the other way. It's not so much they're connecting with a psychic shadow of Sanguinius that's still existing somewhere in the
Hmm.
warp and reliving those memories. It's kind of like they've got that old DVD out of a fucking cupboard somewhere that's ancient, and they're just they're being forced to watch it on repeat in their brain, if you
But
see what
that's
I mean.
super scary because the version code on that DVD is the warp. That was a hell of an extended metaphor. Go me. I mean,
Yeah,
that
there we go.
that constant just on the edge of chaos is in many ways kind of poetic.
So
You know, it
I nearly said VHS and really showed my age, so it's fine.
Oh, see, I like that because then it gets all weird and warpy, and you have to adjust the
Yeah.
tracking. And wow, there's been multiple
Yeah,
generations
and
of you not
all of a
tracking.
sudden, you see a little girl climbing out of a
Oh,
well,
hell.
and all hell breaks loose. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. But the interesting thing about the death of Primarchs is that whenever they're killed, there's this brilliant flash of
Hmm.
light, as though a massive amount of energy is released. So, and in the Black Legion books, there are a few scenes on the Vengeful Spirit, and on the Vengeful Spirit, there are these crystalline structures
Hmm.
that
Oh, it's a god
like
awful tease. Yeah.
yeah, that reminds some of the uh characters
the
of Sanguinius.
yeah.
So I'm definitely on the side that Sanguinius is probably not coming back. Um,
I
I
mean, if he
think
does come back, it could be very bad.
yeah,
I think
it's
they would I think they'd break too much stuff if they brought him back.
Well,
yeah,
this is
Doesn't mean they're
where
not going to do it, but
you're ahead of me with the last thing we talked about in the first week was the scouring and what comes now, right? Because
yeah.
they're bumping up against that. They can't, I mean, Games Workshop does retcon things. They're not afraid to do that, but they are sort of the potential for breaking stuff now is stronger. So, what would you like to see in the Scouring series with the Primarchs? What do you think we're gonna see? Do either want to go first to give the other a chance to
so
think?
Matthew can go
I
first because I
yeah,
have
I'll
a
go first for that. I mean, so what I think they're going to do with the Scouring series is they're going to set up the kind of unresolved issues with the Primarchs and their disappearance as to why. Because again, as I say with the names and everything at the start, there is a lot of 40K where you can get something it becomes very painfully obvious it was written in the late 80s.
Oh yeah,
You know, Sanguinius, Angron, fucking religious guy, Lorgar, Lion L.
Portarabo.
Johnson.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's endless. And you, yeah,
Ferris
okay,
Manus. I
And
bring up Ferris Manus every
to,
time we discuss
there you
names.
go. Exactly.
to me though, that's cool because in the Old Testament, all the names are puns. So I mean, Adamah is just Earth. So
Yeah,
we're
it's
good. I love the on the nose names. Yeah.
I know, but it's so. But because of that, a lot of the very early law when it was laid out, I mean, obviously you didn't have, 56 heresy books. You didn't have all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
They started writing this stuff much later. I mean, I
Hmm.
mean, Horus Rising was 2008, I think. Um, Rogue Trader was
Everybody's
88 when it
knees
came
feel
out.
it. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I think Rogue Trader was what, 88 when the first one came out.
Was
The
it
first
that? That was one of the first systems, wasn't it?
That was
That
the
was what
first system.
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
the
it was the
first
first one.
that's what the
Yeah.
first game was called, yeah. And I think that were and they didn't even start doing novels until 1990.
Yeah.
Um, it's so there's huge gaps in the lore, and one of the big gaps is where all the Primarchs went. I
Right.
mean, there's the big ones. Obviously, Horus died, Sanguinius died, Ferrus Manus died. Um, all the rest of them just kind of went away. And there's various loose sort of explanations of rumor and myth about what happened to them and
Yeah,
why
I
they went
mean,
away.
some of the
And
deaths are very, it's presumed, but we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, like
yeah,
Dorn is very unsure whether or not he died, but he
Yeah.
was also one of the last Primarchs to
yeah,
leave the Imperium.
Well, Conrad Kurz, his death was never confirmed. It's assumes he let the assassin do his thing, but we don't know for sure.
yeah. And I mean, so it's one of the things where basically there's a lot of holes. I think they're going to use the Scouring series to fill in those gaps effectively
Hmm.
and set up. So in
Well, there's not a lot.
predicting. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, Matt.
predicting what Games Workshop's going to do is a very risky endeavor.
Well, that's why it's
Um,
fun because we're all probably going to be wrong.
yeah, but they're running two mainline stories at the moment. They've finished the Siege of Terror. They're starting the Scouring. They're doing the the sort of the Imperium
Dawn
Nihilus
of
and Imperium Sanctus, the Cicatrix
Indomitus.
Maledictum,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Indomitus Crusade and everything. That's chronologically as much as you're going to be chronological in Warhammer. You got the very forefront and then kind of like the backstory, and they're both kind of advancing at the same time.
Hmm.
They've just finished the first part of the Indomitus Crusade, where so Guilliman having returned, the Lions
Yeah.
returned. They're about Guilliman's should be crossing into Imperium Nihilus, um, at the crossing the gauntlet, all this sort of stuff at this point, and that's where the most of our story's going. Um, I think we're going to get more because obviously the that sort of side of things has very much sort of hinted at the return of the Emperor.
Right.
There's been lots of rumors about multiple different Primarchs coming back, and all the rest of it. I think they're going to do that, but they're going to prep everything with the Scouring series and kind of fill in I concurrent stories of actual records of what happened at the time. So first person accounts of the disappearance of the Primarchs, or at least the ones that they're going to bring back anyway, in sort of the Scouring series, um, to preempt how they're going to bring back the Primarchs. Because the two they've done already have been they've been criticized in
Yeah.
various amounts. The let's just say narratively maybe unsatisfying way that you've been brought back in the going, oh no, he's asleep in this pod all the time, and now and suddenly this Mechanicus guy and this Eldar have just cured him, and he's here. Yay!
Yeah,
What?
he's Red Dwarf, right? Like
Effectively, he is Red Dwarf. Yes.
he's the Red Dwarf Primarch, yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I
makes
mean,
it an odd sort of sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Lion who.
Everybody's
Also,
dead, Robute.
yeah, pretty much.
Except the cat.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh dear.
Lionel Johnson!
Well, and the
So
Felinids, right? The
yeah,
Felinids are very Red Dwarf. Yeah, I make dumb
Sorry,
jokes about this stuff.
we keep interrupting Matthew while he's making his case.
Yes,
yeah.
the
So,
tangents, the warp got the
but
tangents. Sorry, Matthew, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, that's fine. So what I would want, for me, for one, I what I want to see from the scouring, um, one, it's the establishment of the codexes to see that and the
Oh,
breaking up of the
cool. Yeah,
legions.
okay.
Um, Particularly the conflict between Dawn and Gulliman, um, the Iron and the campaign I really see is the Iron Cage, where Dawn effectively sacrifices his legion because it's going to spark another civil war because they don't want to be broken up, and they split up. In the end, they get caught in a trap. Well, Dawn kind of marches them into a trap by Tarabo, which whittles them down to the point where they go from a legion to 3 chapters effectively. So I really understand because obviously Dawn is my favorite Primarch. He is the Imperial Fist on my chapter. So that's the history I'm really interested in seeing in the Scouring. And also, if they could set it up to bring Dawn back, that would be really nice as well. But various people have very strong opinions against that, so maybe they're not going to
Really?
do. Yeah, some people really do not like Dawn
Well,
and don't want to see him back.
I
But
I know that.
yeah,
I don't understand the Dorn hate. We'll talk about that in the Dorn episode.
yeah.
Hmm.
But it's interesting to sort of bring up the Scouring, considering that these two Primarchs will not make an appearance in the Scouring.
no.
Sanguinius is dead, as we
Or at
all
least floating
agree.
around. I mean,
Yes.
Dark
Or,
Sanguinius would be a cool plastic crack.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you do have a Sanguinius model in the Horus Heresy line, so
But
you know.
Dark Sanguinius, it's a new
Yeah,
toy that they can charge $500 freaking dollars for.
yeah.
That
Good point.
that is tempting. I mean, okay, that Fulgrim model's freaking cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
but it's also like Angron's not going to make an appearance because in the lore. Now, granted, Matthew already touched upon this, trying to sort of predict what GW is going to retcon, mold, whatever they might call what they're doing with the old lore. Uh, it, it, Trying to predict that is almost impossible. So, but Angron's first appearance after his him being banished back into the warp is in the first War of Armageddon,
Well,
I
he just
believe.
comes back every 8 weeks and change.
Well, yeah, but it's shortening. The amount of time between every time that he
Hmm.
comes back is growing shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Eventually, it will go down to 8 seconds or something like that
Could
because
we have concurrent Angrons? Again, that would be amazing.
yeah, I mean it's the fucking warp. Of course we
Yeah,
can
like
have
what if there's a little
Yeah.
temporal distortion and he's down to like 2 seconds? There's a temporal
finally,
distortion, and so they're
finally,
all appearing. Yeah, that come on,
finally,
plastic
Angron
crack
will
guy.
find an enemy that will kill him,
Look
and
at
that's
Matthew.
Angron.
Matthew's like, these people are more nuts about this than I am. Look at his face. See, he's laughing
Yeah.
because I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I keep going, how could they make another cool model? And I mean, the Scouring's definitely an opportunity for that. And I don't think that his story's completely told. What happens when it runs out of time? Does he finally get peace?
Well, that's the thing is that I think it's the reason why it's shortening is because we're approaching the end times of the Warhammer. I'm not saying that this is going to happen in our fucking lifetime because God knows games worked up.
It's like One Piece. When does it end? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, but it's
But this is
like
also the before times, right? I mean, this is the sequel to the prequel.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
Yeah, it's
I mean,
31K.
just to kind of put a pin in that on
Mhm.
how fast Games Workshop work and how
Yeah.
fast things change. They brought Gloom back in 2018.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's it's now 2026, and he's only 12 years into the Indomitus Crusade.
Takes a long time for void ships to turn, okay? They're big
Yeah, yeah,
But
suckers. Yeah.
the point is, that's nearly a 1 year for 1 year kind of
yeah,
relationship
yeah.
almost.
But then again, Gene Father, the Belisarius Call and Fabius Bio novel
Yeah.
is about 100 years after Gilliman has returned, because
Yeah.
that's
Well,
the books are published not necessarily
in no,
cheap.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
The Dark
Like
Imperium
I
happens after the Indomitus Crusade, so it's there's
I
a lot of
the
I appreciate that
the
the writers do get
yeah
together and like plan it before they go off because they
oh
are
yeah, yeah, yeah,
hitting that
yeah,
thing where they don't want to pull a Star Wars and start just going, well, we have to toss it all out cause reasons.
yeah,
it's
Yeah.
it's one of the only hard retcons that I can remember seeing. I mean, like really hard retcons was something to do with the timeline with the Plague War trilogy.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
so it's the very last book of the Plague War trilogy was originally set in the first edition of that book after 200 years of the Indominus Crusade.
yeah,
It was set at the end of the Indominus Crusade. So the Indominus Crusade is meant to, I mean, theoretically, if this holds true, I mean, it's meant to last 200 years. But then they kind of realized, I think, they were kind of just revealing that all these characters are all safe for 200 years.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
Uh,
it would also mean that, it's just so they brought it all the way back. So the last book of the Plague War trilogy now happens 12 years after the start of the Indominus Crusade, just before Gulman crosses over into Nihilus. So it's uh, and there's actually a note in the book if you have a second edition or anything other than a first edition, there is actually a whole page added at the very front of the book of the script saying this has been changed in the book.
Yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah,
what it
yeah.
originally was, and it's no longer true. That's probably one of the only times. There's only one other occasion I can think off the top of my head. I mean, there's probably others, where they've done something like that, and that was when they rewrote. I think it's called Draco. It's the very first book that they ever released. So that was a re release. It was based on Inquisitors, and it was
Oh
dealing with
yeah,
Autumns, and it
yeah.
was released in 1990, and then they re-released it in 2001, having basically the original version has like modern world references to it and none of the lore accurate references sort of thing. Um, I so they went back and rewrote it. It's effectively the exact same story. They've just changed the language in it so it's law compliant in effect. That's one of the only other times I can think of them actually doing like a dramatic hard retcon like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Most of the time they just overwrite things, which
Well,
actually works really
of
well.
Yeah.
yeah, and often they just claim, well, that was just a rumor.
Right.
That
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily true.
Everything
Like
is canon, not everything is true.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing with the fact that the Imperial Fist originally had the body of Rogel Dorn, the entire body, but now they
Mm,
just have the fist,
just a
which
hand. Yeah.
yeah, so well, I'm hopeful for you, Matthew, because I'm hoping Corvus Corax comes back as well. So,
Oh,
Well,
but
you, I
it's
mean,
easier to bring him back.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
as I remember with Korax, he's just rampaging around the warp chasing Lorgar,
yeah.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
as a
Yeah.
yeah.
in some sort of as some sort of mutated raven or something.
Yeah, he just
So,
Leroy Jenkins did into the warp, into the Eye of Terror.
yeah,
So it was pretty
Well, but
badass.
yeah, same with Jagatai. He just Leroy Jenkins his way into the webway, and no one's seen him since.
yeah.
I'm
So,
gonna get so many people angry at me for crossing the metaphors. It's like that's World of Warcraft. Don't put it in Warhammer. I don't care. It's evocative. Okay,
I,
guys.
I, I bet my ass he screamed Jagatai
God.
Khan.
Okay,
Oh
we are
dear.
getting really punchy. We don't want to fall to chaos. This is getting a bit nuts. This is the beauty of men liking stuff. We're not sure where it's gonna go. So if you have a different idea, guys, in the comments, don't go, you didn't bring up, add it. You guys in the comments are allowed to like stuff too, because liking stuff is manly. Like, add to it. Add another topic. We are going to do the other Primarchs. Don't worry. But Matthew, Jan Helge, thanks for coming on, demonstrating like
Thanks
real
for having me.
extreme knowledge, but also your clear love of this stuff. That's why we do it. So thanks so much. You guys are great.